So today I want to talk to you about the World Barista Championship, what I think the point is, sort of briefly what the competition is in general, as well as where I find the value in that. So if you're not familiar with World Barista Championship, or WBC, as I will call it very often, I will leave some links in the notes in this video. Every time that I start with one of these videos, I want to go straight to the rules and regulations, okay? And I want to see what the rules and regulations are saying the judges are looking for in particular. So in order to do this, let's go to page 27, section 13.1 in the 2024 World Barista Championship Rules and Regulations. So according to the rules and regulations, the judges are looking for a champion who has a mastery of technique, craft, and communication, service skills, is passionate about the barista profession. Second little bullet point there, has a broad understanding of coffee knowledge beyond the 12 drinks being served in the competition. We talk about the 12 drinks being served in competition a lot. And it's a lot more of the just like, hey, I know how to make an espresso. Hey, I know how to make a great milk drink. It's, I know more about the industry. I know how coffee was produced. I know how things are interconnected. I know how something else happens beyond that. It's a little bit of a sort of vague point, I guess you could say, but it does come up in conversations. Third bullet point is prepares and serves high quality beverages. That is what most people just assume. If you just make the best coffee, then you will automatically win. And to some degree that's true, but there are other things to consider in there. And our last one is may serve as a role model and source of inspiration for others. Now, I always highly recommend reading the rules and regulations, especially for anybody who is competing or is considering to compete. There's so much information just in the rules and regulations. It's really important to actually read those and fully comprehend and understand them. This evaluation criteria, what the judges are looking for in a barista champion, is only one little part of these rules and regulations. But I think this is a really good one to look for, because this is sort of saying, like, what's the point, right? We're looking for a champion. And I'll get into a little bit more of that here in just a little bit. So now, I feel the intention of this competition is, now, I may have some biases here because I have won the World Barista Championship, but I feel that it is looking for a representative of specialty coffee. It's, you're trying to drive excellence forward in some way, right? We're looking for not just someone who can make great coffee drinks, but also can represent the industry, can talk, can present, has some other skills as well. Another thing that we're sort of thinking about, and what I think about, is sort of forward thinking. Who's someone who's pushing the boundaries, who's showing the possibilities of what coffee can be. And there's, I think, a time and place for innovation. There's a time and place for just redefining what some of the things are that we do. These championships have had a lot of value over the years. Going on beyond that, I think that there's something we can really point to, which is what are some benefits that the specialty coffee industry has had from the World Barista Championship or other types of events like this, in the past especially. Now I see this competition, especially the Barista Championship, as a platform for ideas, right? This is some place where you can put out an idea or a new thought or a groundbreaking way to make espresso or something of that nature, put it on stage and get either rewarded or penalized for it, depending on what's going on there. If it's a really truly great idea, I think that there should be, it's a way for other people to see that, I guess I should say, right? So I think that platform is invaluable, first of all. Now, if we look at the history of the championship and things that I have seen changed over 20 years or so of barista championships, one in particular is, look at the way we used to serve espresso. We used to serve very traditional espressos. We didn't weigh them, right? We would just go by volume. We would maybe weigh our dry dose. A lot of times we didn't even do that. So there's a level of just accuracy, a level of understanding of what's extracting, why, how, when, things like that, that's sort of changed over time in a lot of ways because of barista competitions. Another thing that's happened is we've always used to serve blends, right? Always used to say, and then even judges would say, like, well, look, a single origin coffee can't be balanced for an espresso. It's never going to have the body that an espresso should have. It's never going to have the flavor complexity or the balance of whatever that somebody assumed should be in an espresso. And nowadays, single origin is the primary way to make coffee for these competitions. To say what's funny is that we've sort of gone back in a circle, and now you have people who are making blends in competitions again, trying to seek new complexity, trying to seek new flavor experiences. So in a way, we've sort of redefined what a blend is or what it should be or how it should perform and brought the value back, which is actually kind of fascinating to see. Another one that I've seen is grinding, right? Now, when I first started Barista Championships, Maz or Major or Super Jolly or a Rober were the primary grinders you would use. If you weren't using a Maz grinder, you weren't making good coffee, essentially, according to some people's thought process. We saw that change, right? Especially Malkoenig had been sponsoring the Barista Championship for several years with the K30 grinder in particular, but they had never required people to use that grinder. They provided it, and if you wanted to use it, that's great. It was very generous of them. Then one year, I believe it was 2009 or so, we had to use the Malkoenig grinders. They changed the rules that you had to use the provided grinder and you could not use a different brand. This was a big change because it forced people to use something else. And now, Malkoenig is considered one of the premier grinding options that's out there. Oddly enough, because people started using them. Before, people felt they weren't getting as good of coffee as they should have for different reasons. But a really notable thing that happened with grinders happened in 2013 when I won the World Barista Championship. That was the same year that Matt Perger used the EK43 on the world stage for the first time. And this changed people's perception of how to do espresso or what the possibilities of espresso preparation could be, particularly in terms of single dose grinding, using very expensive coffees. So you didn't have to waste any coffee. You didn't have to put it in a big hopper and worry about the weight of it or worry about grinding out 20, 30, 50, 100 extra grams of coffee that you just would waste. And that was a massive paradigm shift. And that made the EK43 into a very, very popular grinder for every cafe in the world almost. It was that multi-purpose grinder of single dose shots as well as bulk grinding and everything else you needed to do with it. Now, there are other options these days, but that was a big turning point for coffee grinding in competitions as well as the way that we approach things in cafes, and some cafes just purely being set up to do single dose grinding, which is a huge shift. Another thing that we think about is brewing ratios, right? Now, we didn't usually think of it in brewing ratios because we weren't measuring everything in gram weight when we were extracting our coffee all the time. Way back, say 2004, 2005, right? But there was generally a consensus that, I'm going to grind, maybe I'm grinding 20 grams of dry dose, and I'm extracting just under 2 fluid ounces of coffee, or say, call it 55 mils of coffee, right? And that essentially was saying, hey, this is the best extraction for most of these coffees that we're making. Now, we roast coffee very differently these days. We grind coffee very differently these days. And so the competitions have also opened up our minds to say, hey, you know what? I can make a longer shot, a lungo, if you will, right? Or I can make a ristretto, depending on the coffee or the circumstances, and it might be really good for that purpose. So now, like even right now, we see some trends where we're doing, say, 17, 18 gram doses, and we're doing 40, 50 gram extraction yields, which is like 1 to 3 almost, right? And that's a big change in terms of what is acceptable or what is accepted as espresso. Right? So we've seen a lot of these different things change over the years, including even just rethinking what the flavor is, what's acceptable amounts of acidity, what's an acceptable body for an espresso. All these things have come through not solely because of Barista Championships, but it has definitely been a platform for people to see them and understand the concepts and apply them in their own cafes, try them out, and see if it works for them. So there's a huge benefit for the Barista Championship to allow innovation that can push the industry forward. Next thing I want to talk to you about is what's the value of winning? And first thing I'm going to tell you is I'm clearly biased because I have won, right? And but I think that because I've won, I have some pretty specific perspective on that value. Now, for the person who wins, first of all, there's only one person who wins each year, and it's not fair to say that you can only find success through winning, because that excludes 99% of the people who compete, probably. But first of all, I'll tell you, there's career growth opportunities, there's visibility. Even just making it to the top 6 of the World Barista Championship increases visibility, demand. People might really want you to represent their brand, be a brand ambassador, do any number of other things, or find other opportunities for your career growth. Right, so those are massive, and there's just the value of that alone is worth competing. It's a very difficult competition, but it's worth it in that sense. If you own a business, there's an opportunity to have massive business growth. Find buyers, find people who want to invest in your business, find more customers, whatever that may be. So that's sort of my rundown of what the Barista Championship is looking for, why it exists, and just the general approach of it. Now, I want to get into a lot more stuff with this video series and even this channel. So I want to talk about concepts and strategies and methods and the things that go into championships. And I'm really focused on World Barista Championship, at least to start, because that's what I know. I've been doing this for a very, very long time. But to really get into some of the more detailed and sort of high-level ideas, I have to go through the scores. And I have to go through how the competition is scored, how it works, and what you need to be looking for as well. Because if you're a prospective or a current competitor, sometimes there's things that we overlook. So I want you to stay tuned. I want to follow, share this video, whatever you like to do. But stay tuned, because I'm going to dig into the score boxes next. And so my next video, I'm planning to do the espresso evaluation section of the sensory score sheet. There is going to be a lot to talk about in there. So I hope that you find it interesting. Stay tuned. I'll talk to you soon.